Welcome to a new episode of the Let's Turn the Tide podcast by Veolia Near and Middle East. I'm Nadine Zidani, your host, and I'm very excited to introduce this special series, Women for Climate Action, in the occasion of the International Women's Day happening on the 8th of March. And I'm even more excited to kick off this series with Her Excellency, Dr. Nawal Al Hosany. Thank you so much, Dr. Nawal, for accepting our invitation and for having us in the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be with you.
So, Dr. Nawal, I want to start by introducing yourself because you have such an impressive, track record and CV. So I want to explain to our audience what you've been doing. So you serve as the permanent representative of the UAE to the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA. You hold the position of Acting Assistant Undersecretary for Green Development and Climate Change at the UAE's Ministry of Climate Change and Environment. You actively participate in several key international, regional and local climate-focused boards and committees, such as COP28 and the Global Council of the Sustainable Development Goals. Before that, you worked at Masdar, and you also directed Zayed Sustainability Prize, and you are one of the first two Emirati women to climb the Mount Kilimanjaro. So very, very impressive, track record. And I want to come back to, I know a lot of people ask you the question about the Kilimanjaro, but I want to ask you how this achievement impacted your professional career.
Let's start by saying it's actually the first thing that attracts everybody's attention. So when I go to any event or any meeting, this is like the icebreaker question and what gets people basically going. But joke aside, and it's not actually a joke, it's interesting that I was once in many times in many events, and this would be the first question I would be asked, even if I am speaking in a panel. And I think it's because sometimes we assume that, if you are successful, especially if you are a woman and successful in your career, you should just focus on work and, and family. And people forget that actually as a passionate person, you would have passions in many other things.
Yes.
So not specifically you would be just passionate about your work and your job, or you'll be passionate about your family, but it doesn't mean that you cannot do that and have other passions. And for me, I think being on those glaciers and seeing the pictures and understanding the transformation that these glaciers are experiencing in a very short time really affected me a lot personally and made me understand why we should continue to do what we are doing and why we need to pursue even further collaboration and international understanding of those challenges, because those challenges don't have borders, and hence our solutions should not think of borders. So we should always think how we can together find solutions for one of our biggest existential challenges, which is climate change and the global warming that is melting our glaciers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's ours, it's everybody's glaciers, because, once they are gone, and we are going to all of us are going to suffer from that.
And thank you for highlighting that we are all interconnected at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. So I want to start. So my first question, you're a renowned figure, on climate, sustainability, and energy. So I want to ask you your insights on the evolution of the role of women in that field since the beginning of your career until today. So
looking at numbers and statistics, today we have globally the percentage of women in the energy sector is 22%. The percentage when it comes to renewable sector is 32%. So we're doing a little bit better, but once you kind of scratch the surface and look a little bit deeper, you would see that most of those 32% are maybe in the sector, but not actually at the core of the sector. What does that mean? Most of them would be in support services. Most of them will be, working in admin, working in technology, and working in like support, like IT and marketing. Not that those functions are not important. Every element is important, but we are not really finding many in leadership positions in those companies, and we're not finding many engineers or technicians and technologists. The picture is a little bit different for the UAE, and in both, in renewables and in traditional energy. The UAE, we have, and maybe the number now improved, but a few years ago we were the only country globally, the only company globally that have 3 CEOs, women in the oil and gas sector. And when it comes to renewable energy, we have many female Emiratis and residents in the UAE working in leadership positions in this sector. Masdar, in DIWA, in Department of Energy. So you see a lot of women in this sector. We have, I'm sure, we also, the leadership team of the COP28. We have Dr. Sultan, we have Her Excellency Razan, and we have Her Excellency Shamma. And they were, as a team, working hand in hand. The UAE, and for our own COP team here for the UAE, we had Her Excellency Mariam leading the UAE Workforce COP. So women have been having a bigger and more visible role when it comes to climate change here in the UAE. Now, how do I see it progressing over the years? I think, again, it's different for different countries, but if we speak generally, I think the pace is faster than traditional work. We see more women excited and they want to take part, but we still have some way to go.
Yeah, and you said something. You said we see women more excited, to embrace this kind of career. Where is it coming from? Because I'm seeing the past 5 years, I would say, like many more women in that field. So what's your view on that?
I don't want to look things in a stereotypical way, but if we have like a stereotypical lens, I think as women we always feel responsible and we want to take action and want to take care of people around us, but not only people. We always like to take care of our environment and our community and our future, because there is this maternity feel kind of in us by, if I say typically by nature. But I think we all of us tap into what we are, again, back to the passion. And women, let's say, have this tendency more than men to think on the long term of what is better for their families, what is better for their communities. And we saw that with the Zayed Future Energy Prize, and now called the Zayed Sustainability Prize. When a woman wins the prize, you see the impact on the whole community. You see them immediately thinking how they can empower their village. How can they change their neighborhood? How can they sustain these wins for their families? And I've heard this from many other platforms that I was engaged in. When you empower a woman, you empower the community. They worry more about their children and their children's future. And again, it's extremely general statement. But I guess maybe that's why. Because you see, with that tendency, they would like to engage in sectors that will have a bigger impact in the future of their children and and their communities.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And coming back to why are women important in the energy, climate, sustainability sector? I really want you to explain to our listeners, why is it essential to have more women in this sector?
So I think many reasons. First, nobody is immune to climate change consequences. We are all equally impacted. Actually, not true. women in many regions are more impacted by climate change than men. In many countries, they are, and especially in the developing countries, women are they are the one who would go to bring waters for their family. They are the one who will go and bring the wood to cook for their families. So all those kind of roles will see them impacted by climate change more than men. So in many regions they are more impacted than men. So if it is something that is impacting us equally, and even for some of us more than others, so we have equal responsibility to create the solutions for this, and hence we need to have this equal voice. Women bring so much to the table than just diversity. It's not just ticking a box. We have women on our board, or we have a woman in our management. You need to have this diversity of thinking and this engagement in all the value chain of renewable energy and sustainability, either in policy making, technology development, in solutions, and implementation. Because implementation is also very important. Some women taking those jobs, they will really create a huge difference in their communities. So they need to be part of the whole value chain.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just explained us the evolution of women and the role that they have in this sector. What do you think is still the challenge to bring more women in those conversations and in those positions?
I think one of our biggest challenges for every sector, but specifically for this sector, is this unconscious bias. I remember once I was in a conversation with somebody who was leading in the very, very early days when renewable energy was still extremely niche. And I was like, why we have very, very few women in leadership in that organization. We had many women in the entry level, and we had many women in maybe mid-management, but none in senior management and none in leadership. And I was like, why? And it was, a renewable energy focused organization. And his answer to me, and I laughed, and he was like, oh, we couldn't find any. And I was like, you know what? I'm very confused with your answer. I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, where did you find men? And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, where did you find men? It's a new sector. How did you find men for this new sector, and you couldn't find women? I just don't understand. And he looked at me and he was like, you're right. And this unconscious bias sometimes is the biggest challenge. And we need to bring more attention to this. And we need to always call it out when it happens. Because sometimes, people unconscious about it, men and women. Because sometimes we, as women, do ourselves a lot of injustice as well. And we all have equal responsibility to correct it.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful example, because I'm sure it's happening in all sectors, and not only energy.
No.
And I think women, we are the best to challenge the status quo and to bring those conversations to the table. Talking about unconscious bias, did you suffer yourself, in your amazing, career from unconscious bias or any stereotypes because you were women?
Yeah, but funny enough, it was very funny. It's one of my favorite stories. I was always in male-dominated sectors, in the construction industry, in the energy industry. So I've been always, one of the very few, if not the only woman in a meeting room. So I remember traveling on a business trip where I was the lead of my delegation, and all my delegation were men. And we went into, it was the US actually. I walked into the meeting room, and the coordinator of the meetings immediately started asking me, logistical questions. And I was like, why are you asking me this question? Go and ask my assistant. And he looked, and he was very surprised, because he thought, I am the secretary, I'm the assistant, I'm the logistical coordinator, whatever it is, but definitely not core to the team or the lead of the team. And that continued to happen, specifically, it was very interesting, in Western societies. The US, the UK, I have seen this in the beginning of my career. And at the beginning, it used to really annoy me, but then it became very entertaining for me. Like, the minute as you build confidence and you stop worrying about those things, it becomes very entertaining. So I think one way or another, we all kind of suffer from that. The more senior you are, the more often such stories will happen. In my title, when my office books my flights for me, they put Dr. Nawal. How many times I would board an airplane, and if there is a personalized note or if there is a personalized amenity kit, I will have a mail kit on my chair, or the note would be "Welcome, Mr. Al Hosany." Like many times I can't even count. And then that the head of the crew wanted to do something nice just to welcome you, because they had a note that maybe somebody who's senior is boarding, so he or she would have wrote the note with all good intentions, but then addressing me as Mr. Al Hosany usually makes me laugh.
It's incredible.
And my nephews and my brothers get very happy to get the mail amenity kit when I go back home.
I can imagine. Talking about the UAE, so we know that in the UAE a lot of actions are ongoing to support women, and we see, as you said at the beginning, a lot of women in leadership positions in the climate and sustainability field, which is very inspiring. Can you tell us a little bit more about the initiatives that are done by the UAE to push more and more women in sustainability and climate?
I think, if I may just maybe take a bit step back and talk about how the UAE does things. So we are very pragmatic and extremely systematic in our approach. And you would see this in everything we do. So once there is a vision and there is a decision to do something, then this get to be cascaded down to every level. Women empowerment has been core to the UAE's values since its establishment. I think we are the only country where the Women's Union was established almost at the same time as the UAE was established. So from day one, Sheikh Zayed, God bless his soul, and Sheikha Fatima, Allah ya'tiha tul al-umar, has been extremely focused on that men and women of the UAE have equal right and equal access to everything and have equal responsibility towards building the nation. So, I am a product of this country. I was educated in government schools. I was at universities. I was sent to do my PhD on a scholarship from the government. I worked in government all my life. And I was empowered through everything. I got best education, best health, anything I need, it was provided for me. If we wanna speak about some specific examples, one of the things that we launched when I was at Masdar was WISER, which was Women Sustainability, Environment and Renewable Energy. And that platform was very important because we saw how the UAE managed to have more women in the sector in a very very young age and a very short period of time. So we wanted to replicate that model globally, and that's why WISER was created, to give this access to girls and women around the world.
And that's very unique, to the UAE, because I moved in 2018 and I was very much amazed that we are not facing exactly the same challenges. Depends, where we live in the world. And this equal opportunities is very much, ingrained in the philosophy, basically, of the nation. And it really surprised me when I moved, a couple of years ago.
When in every global platform I go to, one of the biggest challenges that faces many sectors, specifically the scientific sectors, that the lack of women in STEM, which is science, technology, and mathematics. And we never had a problem. We had more women graduating from STEM sectors in the UAE than any other country. Like we have more. Our problem was to find women in literature, because most universities, UAE-based universities, most graduates from STEM sectors would be women. The challenge we face is, and which there's a lot of effort have been now put into to address, is that, as they say, we have kind of a leakage in our pipeline. We have a lot of women in the entry level, but most of them, mid-career, they would move. And instead of staying in a technical, like in an engineering department, they would move to maybe marketing or admin or something like that. And the interesting thing, which also I find it very unique to the UAE, just to give you an example of what I mean, is that companies look at this as a challenge, and all of them want to fix it. So one time I got invited by one of our oil and gas companies to go and speak to the women in the engineers in the company, to convince them not to move out of the field projects. So I go to this big auditorium, 50% in the auditorium men, 50%. And I looked at them and I was like, I want to know why we have more men, or equal number of men, in this session that is aimed and designed and tailored towards women. Yeah. And the answer was like, because we want to know, maybe we're doing something wrong. And they were genuine. Each one of them was there in a genuine interest to be part of the solution. Generally, this is not something that men would worry about, but this is an oil and gas sector, which is, male-dominated by nature, by definition. Yeah.
Amazing. And yourself, because you were mentioning those women that do not stay, in a technical path for many years, like a traditional, I would say, career path. Because your profile is fascinating. When I was preparing the podcast, I was like, you're an architect, engineer, you worked, in renewable energies, in diplomacy, you've done many, many different things. And I want to know how did it help you in your career, and why actually you chose, to change path?
Very little scares me. And I think this is very important because, every day you wake up, you will have your schedules and priorities, but unless you are open to opportunities that comes your way, you will be always stuck in the same path. I was very blessed that most of my bosses and my managers were very supportive of me. I never had a sexist boss. Nobody ever told me you cannot do this because you are a woman. My father, God bless his soul, he never looked at us as boys or girls. We were all his children, and we all had to do what we had to do to succeed. So you need to invest in yourself. You need to improve your education. You need to look into how you build on those experiences, but also always remember to be humble, that what you don't know is like 100 times more than what you know. Because the minute you think to yourself, oh, now I know it all, this is when you start going down.
Yeah, this is very inspiring. Really.
Thank you.
So the theme for the International Women's Day this year is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. What do you think are the practical steps we can take to invest more in women, in your view?
I think education is key. Mentorship is very important. Empowerment, and empowerment in the real sense. Like, you don't empower a woman by just telling, oh, I'm empowering you. Empower them with resources, empower them with tools, empower them with responsibilities, empower them with real, tangible elements that will help them to grow. and basically position them. Because what happens also is we sometimes tend to, and I guess women more than men, if I may, and I don't want to sound sexist, but it's generally, again, you know, there are always exceptions, it's generally the case. We as women, we kind of think that our actions will speak for themselves, which they should. Most of the time for men it works. But I think it's very important for women to understand that you need to speak about your achievements, because, you know, you need to inspire other women. You need to be out there for people like the head of that organization I was talking about to see you. Because the thing is, because until now, you know, 32% of women in the sector, so which means that many more organizations don't have women, and they are all, most of the time, you know, you hire who you trust, you hire who you know, your network is the one that's going to determine your career and your future. And unless you expand your network, unless you are in those circles, you know, people are not going to hear about you. So it's very important for organizations to position their women, because that will help them inspire and attract more women. But it's also important for women themselves to be able to, you know, show through, and I guess now with social media, you know, you have the platforms to speak about yourself, not to be shy of accepting invitations to speak in conferences, not to be too busy to participate in podcasts like those, not to be too let's say, because sometimes we say, you know, of my evenings, I just want to go and be with my family. That's very important. But sometimes if there is an important event and an important reception or an important platform, I think it's important for you to be there. So I think having those platforms, positioning platforms is very important. So, you know, education, training, mentorship, empowerment, and positioning.
This is a very important message for all the women, really. This is something I struggled with, you know, as a woman in the corporate place. And yeah, we always think that, you know, I'm doing my work and I'm doing it well, so that's enough. But yeah, definitely. And mentorship and education definitely is going to help. So we have 3 questions that we're going to ask to all our guests in this special series. And I want a quick answer from you. So the number 1 is, who is a woman that inspires you?
My mother.
Wow.
But I also, during my time with the Zaid Sustainability Prize, I was very much inspired by young girls. Especially when we did the global high schools, we introduced the global high schools, and there was this little girls who really had so much passion and drive in their eyes, and they really wanted to make an impact, and that was very inspirational for me. Well, my number 1 inspiration is my mom.
What superpower do women possess that they should rely on more?
Resilience. We are very resilient.
We are. And lastly, what advice would you give to young women watching us?
I'm going to use a slogan we did in one of our campaigns. I would say act for impact. You definitely need to always be active, but your actions has to seek a real impact, you know, for yourself, socially, career-wise, and definitely professionally.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Nawal. That was so inspiring, very insightful. Thank you so much for making the time for us to come and to, you know, organize this podcast episode with you. It's amazing to have you as our first guest for this special series. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me, and best of luck.
Thank
And
you.
happy International Women's Day.
Yeah, happy International Women's Day to all of you. And I have one request for you. If you like this conversation, please share it with one woman around you who would benefit from listening to this conversation. And we have 2 more episodes on this series, so stay tuned.